Welcome to Service Titans, the podcast where we dive deep into the inspiring journeys of Black men within the AmeriCorps community. From serving in classrooms to rebuilding neighborhoods, these are the stories of passion, purpose, and resilience. Join us as we amplify the voices of members of the AmeriCorps community and share their triumphs, challenges, and the impact they've made in their communities. Whether you're a seasoned AmeriCorps veteran or someone considering service, this is the space to explore, reflect, and be inspired. Get ready to be uplifted, empowered, and connected. This is Service Titans.
Welcome to Service Titans, the show where we delve deep into the stories, experience, and insights of remarkable individuals who are making a difference in their communities and beyond. I'm your host, Anton Taylor, and on this episode, we're joined by Malik Stewart, Senior Director at Empower Schools, where he focuses on expanding innovative school models across the country. Malik's leadership journey includes roles at Reading Partners, where he led literacy partnership with Dallas and Fort Worth school districts, and at the YMCA, where he managed impactful grant programs. With a career that began in nonprofit work across cities like Wilmington, Camden, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C., Malik has always been focused on improving outcomes from children in their communities. He holds a BA from North Carolina A&T and a master's from Cabrini University. He's based in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area, where he lives with his wife, Doreen, and his family. Welcome to the show, Malik, and thank you so much for taking time to connect with our audience today.
Anton, thank you so much. I feel honored to be a part of this conversation and really look forward to any contribution I can make.
That's awesome. So I'm just going to jump right in, and I would love to start with just talking a little bit about your career journey and your beginnings. So would you mind sharing a little bit about your career and sort of what inspired you to take on so many nonprofit-related leadership roles as we talk about areas like Wilmington, Camden, Philadelphia, et cetera? So just would love to hear a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, I think what got me there was like a hard head. I originally wanted to be architect and realized that wasn't my spectrum, and then was going to go into graphic design. But I really had several jobs during my time at North Carolina A&T. I had an internship at the North Carolina Museum of Art, where I was mentored by a gentleman named Walter Davis. He's not the basketball player Walter Davis, but he's a renowned person in that area. And he was in charge of the education department, which was news to me that museums had education departments. And he trusted me with a lot of work and workshops and outreach partnerships, one of them being an annual Kwanzaa festival that I believe is still held in the Raleigh-Durham area. And at the time, we brought Dr. Malana Karenga to that area for this workshop. Then I had summer where I was like a playground director, and I would do some volunteerism with the National Black Child Development Institute. But my mind was still set on, I'm going to do things in graphics, I'm going to do design work and things like that. And honestly, right, fresh out of college, I get my first activity or my first role in graphics. And quite honestly, no other word to use, but I despised it. And it just didn't connect with me. And I had a friend who had an opportunity at a residential facility and worked there and absolutely loved it. It was hourly. I had to work all sorts of shifts, but I absolutely loved it. I loved the children who were there. They were there for horrible reasons of things that should not happen to children. But I just loved being there with them. And then that was a for-profit role, but consequently was putting my resume out everywhere, trying to find a role that connected with my inner compass. On the first interview that connected with me was the Christina Cultural Arts Center in Wilmington, Delaware. And I was an education director, but it was just so much more than what I interviewed for. A lot of the work that I did at Christina Cultural Arts Center as an educational director of the community school arts in Wilmington, Delaware, really propelled me to where I am today. And a lot of that had to do with the education director, who's now the retired education director of the center, Ray Jones. A lot of the work that she entrusted me with in my first role, a lot of the outreach partnerships and connections and things like that, which really endeared me and connected me. And then from then it brought me to here.
It's so much as you have these conversations, you sort of learn about that mentorship component, having someone who can help you understand where those passion lies. And you kind of mentioned a couple names there, particularly Dr. Karangan and the African-centered education that is rooted there. But I want to ask Malik, how does speaking to those experiences and sort of segue into sort of the AmeriCorps community and that service component there, how did sort of that early work influence you both learning about AmeriCorps and taking on leadership roles sort of in the AmeriCorps community? I would love to hear how that connection sort of correlated for you.
That's a great question. First, the introduction. So AmeriCorps and its connection kind of happened around the time I was leaving school and going into the professional arena. And I think there was like the National School and Community Corps that I was having a cup of coffee with, and that didn't connect. But there was an opportunity for me, but it just wasn't the right one, I think, at the time. And so it's the Arts Center. I think in like my second year there was a new AmeriCorps organization in Wilmington, Delaware, Public Allies. And Public Allies in Wilmington, Delaware was founded by the now president of Delaware State University, Dr. Tony Allen. But he was the first education director there. And so we had folks who were applying to it and really doing this bit of service 4 days a week. And then Fridays they had to do service projects, and just learning a lot about that. I started to, I'm saying it humbly, I started to identify people who could be good allies, but also work for us in our extended day program at least 4 days a week as a public ally, and really saw the connection to the type of person they were and the type of work that Public Allies was doing. And it was also this way to explain this opportunity that service gives you exposure to these different either interests or opportunities where nonprofits and others need help, and help propel people to their next array of life. So really quickly, there was an individual who I really wanted to have work for me. He worked for me over the summer, and he had applied to Public Allies to work in the production department of the local PBS station because his heart was in production and directing and things like that. And the fact that they were giving him the shot at that was powerful. And so I think for the 4 allies that worked with me, 3 of them either work in education now or work in social service of some light. So out of the 4, 3 of them do that now.
That's awesome. I think that's, as you mentioned, that's one of the really cool things about AmeriCorps, that it gives that opportunity to identify and align where those passions may lie. And then ultimately, like you talk about, seeing that growth and projection, as you mentioned, those individuals have been able to segue that into true fruitful opportunities to make a larger impact. But one thing that we've talked about offline outside of this podcast is that with the idea of service and giving back and the great intent that comes with that, there's a set of challenges that both AmeriCorps members face and then those who are helping lead AmeriCorps members face. Can you talk a little bit about what that has been like from your perspective, just being in the AmeriCorps community and under those different aspects of both leading and sort of supporting AmeriCorps members?
Sure. And please stop me if I get long with the answer. But when I was at Reading Partners, one of the transitions I had was actually supervising AmeriCorps members. So we were going from the recruitment aspect to onboarding them to supporting them during their service, and then the offboarding, and also trying to create this connection at some points for them. Again, I have my prior experience having AmeriCorps members, trying to create this connection so that they had not only a successful offboarding, but a successful offboarding means potentially anybody in their circle, anybody in their alumni family circle, they'll refer. Like they would refer and say, hey, Reading Partners or whatever organization, city here, this is a great organization for you to join. And so I think one of the challenges is often when you have these opportunities, these folks who are going out economically, sometimes it's not a one-to-one, right? It's a service opportunity with award language in there. And so having some understanding of flexibility. And so that potentially, as I remember, was possibly one of the hindrances for me. And in my first experience with AmeriCorps prior to me administering AmeriCorps members. And so one of the things that we tried to do was have a conversation when I was at Reading Partners for my specific region about members and their opportunities to do things in a part-time capacity so that they can earn money to pay rent, to pay bills, to do different things, but not disrupt their service time, and just having enough grace and understanding to know that, for us who are managing that, and we're in full-time roles, and although we may have mortgages and bills and expenses like that and things like that, we have other folks who are taking a term of service, dedicating themselves to this. And so having a little bit of understanding of leeway of what that looks like for individuals who want to do that service. Not saying that there should be overlap, but being strategic enough to say, I get it if you need to work at Starbucks or the local coffee shop or do overnight delivery or things like that. Well, how can I support you so that you're at your best during the day? How can I help you make your hours, but also help you make a living in this city, especially if some of them are coming to a new city and serving in a place that's not their home. So they're not living with a family. They're not renting with a relative. They are renting with everybody else in a different situation. So I think some of that understanding and being flexible enough to put yourself in their position is helpful.
Yeah. And I think that seems to be a consistent thread, particularly the financial implications that come with committing to a year's service. And for better or for worse, they're sort of created this invisible barrier for some folks to even consider a year's service because of the inability to sustain it financially. I know that is definitely a delicate dance for AmeriCorps members. As someone myself who's an AmeriCorps alum, I know the struggles that go with that, and the more that I feel that could be elevated, hopefully it just enhances the opportunity for people, particularly who identify and look like you and I, to be able to explore this idea of service, and particularly under the AmeriCorps umbrella. But Malik, I want to kind of segue that into my next question is I also know that representation is so important. And oftentimes what I've seen with my 10 plus years sort of being a member of the AmeriCorps community, that too often there isn't the level of representation, particularly as we talk about Black men. And I recently was in a group of men who are members of the AmeriCorps community in various different ways. And we talked about like some of the struggles of just that dynamic in itself. Is there anything that you can sort of share in that, like being a leader of AmeriCorps members and also understanding that there's not a lot of representation, or maybe there's not an opportunity to create a lot of brotherhood per se, just based on just the dynamics. Anything that you can share with that, like what that experience was like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Even as an administrator, trying to have reflective opportunities where people want to look like you. And of course, we're not assuming that everybody that looks like me has the same experience I do. Mm-hmm. There are some common experiences that, whether you're aware of them or not, they're happening. And I think having that space is important. I want to reference you. Probably didn't think this was coming up, but like when we worked together at a reading partners, you recognize that, especially with different levels of African Americans, and we were able to have an affinity group conversation several times, whether it was around recruiting students from HBCUs and exposing them to AmeriCorps, and maybe seeing if they would be interested in that type of service, or just having the space to have the conversation. Mm-hmm. And so it is important, because sometimes you are a unicorn. Even if you're in a community or a like community facing organization, you can still be a unicorn in your position or your role. And so having others to bounce ideas off of, to bounce strategies, to think about the best way to implement your service program. I mean, just to even think about days of service and things like that, and to have those kind of conversations. Sometimes they're not AmeriCorps administrator one-to-one. Sometimes there's a level where like-minded individuals or like-facing individuals can share. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, as you said, and I definitely vividly can recall those conversations we would have in relations to how do we continue to identify networks to engage around this idea of service in AmeriCorps. And just fundamentally, I just enjoyed those conversations just to talk and to connect. I definitely understand how important that can be. But I also would ask this, like, as for those who are either considering a year of AmeriCorps or maybe considering continuing a pathway from a leadership standpoint, are there any words of advice that you would give, or things that continue to help you as you lead others and continue to have service as the foundation of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anyone who's at a community or university level, or you just graduated high school, you're trying to think about your next step, or doing the proverbial gap year, things like that right now, I would say as an individual who took a semester, I think 2 semesters off, if AmeriCorps was established when I took those semesters off, it's probably something I would have looked at doing and would have probably got my campus to service a lot better than me going into the world of graphics or, into the world of for-profit where my campus wasn't laid. So I would encourage anyone, especially those who feel their campus point in them communities, those who are enrolled in any type of educational structure, but especially those enrolled in HBCUs. And if you're not even enrolled in a school, if you're in a community college, if you're not going to school, if you're thinking, hey, my slant is towards, or my slant is towards community feeding, and I just don't know what to do, like I would suggest them applying. And then like from an administrative standpoint, from a recruitment standpoint, I would say it's really one of the benefits, like when we start to have those conversations with the way we're thinking out of the box for the audience. Like my daughter at the time was a freshman at Prairie View University, which is HBCU in the Houston metropolitan area. And we were having conversations about students like that several months before COVID, but students like that potentially serving as ambassadors on campus to help do recruitment. And that daughter, and actually my middle daughter, went on to do service opportunities in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That daughter actually did two summers of service. But I think before I get off track, I think thinking about things that way, which is like a non-traditional way to think about how do we recruit in a pocket where people don't have enough information about service, but are actually being inundated. I went to 2 HBCUs. You're being inundated. I didn't go to all 113 or however many there are, but in 2 different parts of the country, you are inundated with the message of service. And so how do you tap into that beyond a flyer or beyond a table? Or there's a tabling event, conversations with minded individuals. So I would encourage administrators, 1, to build a network, build community, but 2, think about different ways to recruit. And 3, ask your members, ask your current member group about their experience early and find out if there's ways that you can recruit. Like one of the humbling conversations we would have would be, would you tell one of your friends about this? And I can have that off the record versus the data that we had to submit. That off the record conversation also gives you enough opportunity to make corrections where you can. You can't make corrections about pay. You can't make corrections about the Ed Award, but you could make some supplement decisions that help them think about the friends that they would refer to you or the community that they would refer to you. So I think like as an administrator, think strategically about your recruitment efforts and think non-traditionally about them.
Yeah. And I think what you mentioned is really having those candid conversations with members about, their experience and really using that as a bridge to improve on that experience for AmeriCorps members. But Malik, you also touched on something that you sort of mentioned. You didn't want to take us too far off the path, but it dawned on me that sometimes this is a forgotten piece of AmeriCorps. And I say the parents. And oftentimes I know you sort of started this is that you sort of had a pathway in which you saw yourself career-wise. And I don't know what influence family sort of had in that, but I know in my family, as I talked about service, I got some side eyes sometimes about, hey, what do you think? And so for those, as you talked about parents and your daughters went on to do service, and as a parent myself, I had that conversation with my son and he decided that a gap year wasn't for him. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like any advice for parents, or what was that dynamic like for you? I would love to hear a little bit about that. I think parents are so often overlooked in this process as we talk about AmeriCorps and exploring this as a career pathway.
Yeah, I think from my standpoint, again, I was raised by a single mother who my mother had 2 years at Hampton, but did not complete. But so we weren't silver spooning it. We borrowed spoons from really well-meaning neighbors and a lot of good relatives. If I said I wanted to be a trapeze artist, my mother would have supported me being a trapeze artist. So I think I wasn't doing anything detrimental to the community. And so I think like that's the thing. I would say from a parental standpoint, one of the things that we noticed, and you and I could probably connect on this, is the number of individuals that sometimes would use the AmeriCorps experience to find out, is this something, as I said earlier about my own campus, is this something that this is something I really want to do. I am pre-whatever. I don't want to put a slant to any profession. I am pre-whatever. I am this profession. This is the family profession. I'm going to be the next in line to take over the family profession. But is your slant going a different way? And I remember my first year of reading partner, one of my regional managers, in her family, there was, I forget how many professionals of the children. She was the educator. She was the one who did service. She was the one who did, and her mother and all supported them. But I think like the mother was an attorney, the father was a doctor, the brother was an engineer, the sister was something else. She was the AmeriCorps member. Real story. And then she left us as a manager. She had been an AmeriCorps member, decided that she wanted to do that was a manager of AmeriCorps members with us, and then transitioned from us to be a social worker, in Oak Cliff, which is a historically African American community in Dallas. Her compass kept pushing her that way. Mm-hmm. But the thing I would support her parents in saying is that her parents supported that compass. So she's contributing to the community. If the community contributing to the community, I think the parents, I would say, you'd probably say, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Support them. And I'd say really quickly with the flip, I have 3 children. The 2, my oldest had a focus where, hey, I think I'm going to do something service-wide. She did 2 summers of AmeriCorps. It helped her clarify what her current focus is right now. My other child did a summer of service and completely started to change her thinking about what type of professional she wants to be, even if it's in the legal field or the political field, and the type of work that she's doing as a volunteer after AmeriCorps for the last year plus has been incredible. Voter registration drives, just community awareness, the types of things she's been doing since her AmeriCorps term of service has really started to shift in her conversation with my wife and I, the type of experience she wants to have after college. So let that campus go. I'd say as long as it's support to the community and it's not harming the community, I'm a happy doctor working on me. Mm-hmm. And I don't want, I have legal paper drawn up for a relative once. I don't want an unhappy attorney drawing up legal paper for me. By the same token, I don't want my child taught by an unhappy teacher. Let them follow their compass and support them with their compass.
Man, I love that.
It's not your compass.
I love that. And I mean, as a parent, I can definitely attest with that is, just allowing, your child to sort of find their way and understanding we just want to be supportive and long as it's contributing in a positive way. Malik, I think that's a great segue into a segment of our podcast what we call Service Titan. And then what we like to do during this component is shine a light on the individual in our life who has maybe had a lasting impact, whether that's small or big. And I think during our lives, we've had countless individuals who have had an impact on us. And I think it's so important that we take a moment to acknowledge those individuals. So what I would love to do is give you the space to acknowledge a service titan in your life. And again, this is someone who has had an impact on you, whether that's small or big. We'd love to hear about that.
Sure. For me, most of the people who've had an impact on my life who, in terms of service, they had worked for our particular borough in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, Lansdowne Borough, and they had their names on across their chest. They were sanitation for department. The number one person who's still living today is my uncle Chubby, and his name is Nonp Sr. He is the husband or now the widower of my mother's best friend who recently passed. But one of the things that Uncle Chubby has always done is instilled in me caring for somebody else. Always took the time to speak to me in futuristic terms, but not in a way where it was preachy, in a way where he put it where the goats can get it. And one of the things he always said, and he's one of the visits I try to make when I go back, one of the things he's always said to me is, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. And so one of the first jobs I had, paid jobs, was I worked for him landscaping. And I think that there was such a connection with it, that spiritual connection of what I started with him and what I learned from him. But there was also a lot of trust. He has 2 sons who are like brothers to me. One is 3 years younger than me, one is 7 years younger than me. But there were times I was responsible for them. Like they would trust me to watch them and, watch them overnight. And ironically, I was talking to his older son yesterday, and I think his younger son by text, we're talking on Friday or 2 days ago about just things that we both connect to, like, and just reminiscing about things of our specific childhoods. But he is so impactful, and not a person who is accolade driven, but really wants to spend time trying to help somebody do the right thing. The thing about him also is, as I go into this, when you're raising your own family, and my uncle worked 2 jobs. So he worked at the post office overnight, but he ran his own landscaping business during the day. And he's married to his wife, 50, raising 2 children. Enough time for me. Right? You find enough time for me that time is important enough that I start to think about decisions I make and things like that, and just interactions I have, and just being a model, but not being a preachy model, but being a model that in the way he's lived. So he's just been like a service titan to the degree that for me, beyond the work, and sorry to get a little verbose with this, beyond the work I do, there's sometimes when there's a connection with an individual or a child, and it's like, it's not this, I can save that child. It's this connection, like, you're supposed to stop and have a conversation with this child. Really go and have this conversation. You're supposed to stop and give time to this person. Go and give time to this person. And so that's the thing that I noticed I picked up from him. That what he's done with me, I picked up from him. And it's not I'm going to save the world thing. There's a concept saying, you need to make time for this person. You need to make time for this child.
Man, that's so powerful. I think just thinking of that importance of time. I think in a world where we get so caught up in so much of the glitz and glamour, we forget about just the importance of presence, and how someone just being able to see how you move and how you interact. And particularly us as young men, like that can be so impactful. So, it's so much there, the idea of trust. And I love that it's not what you do, but how you do it. It's definitely words of wisdom. We all take it to.
It is his signature line. If he had a signature line, that would be his. He has some others that we won't mention on the podcast, but his signature line that I can mention on there is, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. To the point that if I text his son and say, complete this sentence, it's not what you did, they completed. We have to go back. The three of us can go back and forth with that, but to the extent of it, I mean, if I could, just really quickly, his younger son is a baseball coach. His personal son, his child, is not a baseball player, but his youngest son's child is not a baseball player, but his youngest son coaches baseball. He feels like and that's not his main job. His oldest son has a main job as well, but his oldest son saw a need that my mother had. He did in the chat with his grandmother. He saw a need his grandmother had renovated her house. Saw a need my mother had, and what turned out to be like one quick fix of a thing ended up being, I'm going to find the senior assistance program. I want to make sure that you don't get any predatory loans. And I want to supervise your house being gutted and renovated. He gutted and renovated a 100-year-old row home. And it is, I sit with my mother and I'm like, you hit it there? That's your central. That's your central heat. We didn't have central heat when I was here. That's your central heat just going. Like, just things like that. But that's on the dad. And when his dad came in to see the work of his son, and just like, come on over, see Aunt Lucy's house. Just looking at my Uncle Chubby, look at this handiwork, and it's like, Uncle Chubby and I talking later, like, that's you. Like, doing that because of you. That's you.
That's the values you instilled, and the mentality and the mindset. It's not doing it for that. Just know it needs to get done and doing it.
It's not their main job. It's not their main job, but it's like, I see a need. I see nothing that needs to get done, and we'll make sure it's how I do it.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not what
awesome.
I do. I'm going to make sure. And that's what his dad was marveling at. His dad was looking at, again, his son's work and saying, how you do it. And like that comes, like when he talks to me about family or wife or like work, he's talking to me about it, how you do it. And like when we're sitting there talking, that's why I said, I sit with him days and I'm like, thank you.
Yeah, I know. I think again, like it's definitely those individuals in our lives who are either intentionally or unintentionally are just leaving those everlasting imprints on our lives. And I think as we sort of segue into closing things out, I surely want to give you an opportunity, Malik, if there are any things that you're working on or ways that people can just get in touch with you if they're want to reach out for just general questions about your journey or ways in which they can get involved with work that you're doing. Is there anything that you want to highlight there? I want to give you the space to do that.
Yeah, I think, as you mentioned before, I'm still in the nonprofit space and nonprofit educational space. I can be reached through LinkedIn, and if they wish to do a search of Malik, Malik, the initial J, and last name Stewart. You can find me on LinkedIn and we can connect. And just if there's ever a space where I can lend somebody who's new nonprofit administrator or thinking about switching in a nonprofit, virtual cup of coffee, you can do that. And also, I'm also progressively a learner always. So I like to learn what I don't know and learn how to work with people who are new to the nonprofit space, but also new to the service space. And I think like those are pretty big shoes to not only fill, but also they're big shoes to wear, and love to help anybody who's deciding to put those shoes on. And if somebody's in a space like where any potential future architects who don't want to be an architect and are trying to think about what to do next, we can have that conversation too. I know that I'm not the master of that journey, but I know that journey well. And being puzzled about what in the world am I supposed to do, or having that first job experience and being like, this is not it. Like I said, I didn't say this to you as we were starting, but as I said, I did not like it. What I was saying to myself was, what did I do? what did I just spend? What did I just spend the last couple of years studying? What did I just do to myself? What did I do? And so, service is definitely, as we said, the price we pay for being here, and finding what that is can be a great contribution. I mean, so would love to connect with people about that. I think that's yeah.
No, awesome, Malik. And I know that you truly mean that. So thank you for extending that opportunity to our audience. And again, thank you so much for sharing. There's so much that you sort of highlighted as far as just your journey, how people can get involved, and the impact of service in general. So for those who want to get in touch with Malik, feel free to check him out on social media. And with that, until next time, keep the conversation flowing, keep service front and center, and continue shining bright in your communities. This is Service Titans, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for joining us as we explored the inspiring journeys of Black men in AmeriCorps. Keep the conversation going by connecting with us on social media. Until next time, stay committed, stay courageous, and keep striving to make a difference. This is Service Titans, where every story told is a testament to the power of service. Thank you for listening.